Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you had a pleasant lunch, had some good time already. Thank you very much, Christian, for having me as a speaker as well. Again, do, it is great fun for me always to do some discussion. I'm very happy. I'm now at the last day on the communication day because I think that's the most important one, at least in my line of thinking. For those who doesn't know me yet, my name is Remco Broekmans. I'm working for Genesee Academy, being a trainer on Data Vault and ELM, and also do a lot of workshops on ELM where I help organizations in workshops to find out what are the right core business concepts which need to be modeled and the relationships in between. And before lunch, for those of you who listened in, sorry, Hans was talking about who is your customer, about core business concept. That's important to understand to go in contact or in discussion with the business, not being me, not being us, with the business to find out what is important for them from a business concept perspective, what's being needed to model out. And it's kind of what I did on day one of the conference, where I did the extra presentation on generalization abstraction, kind of. And it is important to understand to go into a discussion with your organization what we're talking about. And this presentation, I want to focus on not so much on the business concept. So, what do we need to model, what's important for the organization, but how those business concepts are related to each other. So I'm going to talk more about relationships and how ELM is going to move forward on that one. Uh, we in our line of thinking, we are looking for what we call natural business relationships. So we don't care about any foreign key relationships which is coming towards us from source system. We are really want to go into a discussion with your organization, with business people, say, hey, if we have identified all these business concepts, how do you want to relate that information? How do you want to make sure that, hey, I have the very simple one, a sales event. Hey, I have a sale, and in order to have a sale, I need to have a customer, I need to have an employee, I need to have a store, I need to have products. So, in other words, I have 5 core business concepts: sale, customer, employee, products, and store. And the organization will tell me that, hey, in order for that to sale, all those core business concepts are related to each other. That's my national business relationship. So we will, being given to us, say, hey, if this is connected to it or related to it in data vault, those will become links. By the way, in anchor modeling, it will become a tie, right? Because it is just what it is. It is just a relationship between the business concepts. Uh, Very important. All the relationships are unique and specific. And I know that Hans was doing a very nice presentation for lunch talking about me buying a Prius, which, by the way, I have not. But if I would buy a Prius, then I will be related to a Prius, and that's my relationship. If I'm also driving in a Prius, that's a different relationship because buying the Prius, buying that car, and driving that car are two completely different relationships. The business will tell me, hey, we know people driving in a car and we know people buying a car. Since these are two different relationships, it also means they will have multiple links to get that one going. Uh, every natural business relationship is clear on its own. And I know that Marco is going to be talking after me. And with fact-oriented modeling, it's very important to say, hey, I can describe that relationship. I'm going to describe in to make it clear in my own wording. Hey, Remco drives a Prius. So it gives Remco is apparently is the customer, Prius is the car, but it has a clear meaning of that relationship. The organization, going back one, the organization, I mean the business part of the organization, need to be able to identify and to tell you what the business relationship is. That's not always easy. just like finding out the correct core business concept. It is not always easy, but it is something we need to do. It needs to be done, and it needs to be told to us. Uh, it is no way that you're going to create a very good data model if you're just focusing on what your source model or source models are. Because what you then come up with, and unfortunately, I see a lot of those examples where people are restructuring their source system into a data vault model or another model, but it's just restructuring the same information again. It doesn't make any sense if the organization cannot tell you what is going on. Uh, Also, very important, an event or transaction is not a natural business relationship. It will drive a relationship because, in order, if you have an event or a transaction, it will relate multiple core business concepts to each other. But an event or transaction is a core business concept. It is something the organization, the business will tell you, hey, we have something, an event, transaction, that's important for us. We want to know more about it. We can describe it. We can identify it. We know what is a sale. We know what is a repair. We know what is a service. We all know those kind of stuff. We can identify it. It's important for us. It is not a link. It is a core business concept. It will drive relationships though. So it will make sense that whenever you have an event or a transaction, it is the heart of your relationships. It will drive relationships. But there's no way that an event or transaction on itself can be modeled as a relationship because it is not. It is really more than that. Let's come up with my very fine example. I had, this discussed Wednesday as well, but I had a groin rupture, and my example now is Remco has an appointment in the hospital with a doctor and got diagnosed as groin rupture. Again, don't recommend it, but yeah, it can happen. Uh, Finding my core business concepts, right? Remco appointment, hospital, doctor, diagnosis, groin rupture, all the stuff which is important for us. Coming out of my business case, people are telling me that one. Next step will be to identify what is the event, what is the place, what is the person, what's the thing, what's the other concept we might be interested in. And instead of just saying, getting the next step right, it's identify what is Remco. Well, Remco, and I think we had a discussion, or Piotr was asking the question before lunch in the session of Hans. What if, and that really was happening, right? The organization, the business people are not talking about patients, but are talking about Remco. Just give me the name for it, or and they are not. This case already took doctor, but they just say Hans, whatever, because he apparently is a medical doctor capable of diagnosing some people with groin rupture, whatever. Then the thing is, you need to go into discussion with your business people, with the organization, to say, what do you mean with Remco? What is Remco? Is Remco the doctor? Is it the ward? Is it the just an employee, or is it the doorman, or is it the patient, or is it the delivery? They will give you the opportunity to just say, especially when you say, "Hey, I'm going to ask you, categorize those. Is Remco a person? Yeah, but he's not just a person; he's a patient, right? Just like we had a diagnosis, and we're also given groin rupture. Groin rupture is the instance of a diagnosis. Important enough, a categorization is not abstraction. So we're not going to model event, person, place, thing as, right? I think we had the one on, I know that Christian is very fond of this one, right? We have a thing, relationships. Yeah, that's not what we're going to do, right? At Spain, we're not going to say, hey, we have an event related to a person, related to a place, related to a thing. No, we know, I hope you understand the one, that we need to model appointment, hospital, doctor, diagnosis, and patient. It could end up happening that you say, okay, we're adding relationship. Hey, there's an appointment which is in the hospital. An appointment if a patient has an appointment, and it's appointment with the doctor, and it could result in a diagnosis. So this is kind of, if I want to describe the relationship, and I know that Marco would be probably pretty happy on this one. Uh, this is just normal, plain sentences. What's going on? If I would vault this model, if I would go into vaulting, I would just say, okay, all my core business comes for hubs, and the relationships are going to end up in relationships of in link tables. So I have a hub appointment and a link, calling it in, giving a kind of functional name, hospital, hub hospital, etc., etc. And although I cannot say it's not true, right? Because the appointment is in the hospital. A patient has an appointment, a doctor, appointment with a doctor, and the appointment could result in a diagnosis. I'm going to take one step back now and just say, okay, what is really going on? If I'm looking at my canvas, what I used before, I'm going to say, did my sales example again, just to make it very clear. If I have my canvas, right, I have all my core business concept. I identify my events, my person, my place, my theme, maybe some other concept. Let's just take out one example, one event. And let's just start off with my sales event. I'm using a canvas for this one. I'm very happy with using canvases, making stuff very, very clear. What are the core business concepts involved related to this event? Well, for a sale, I need to have an employee helping out on the sale. There need to be a store. There are products in the store, in the sale, and there need to be a customer. So in order to have this sale, I need to relate to all the other stuff at the same time, because that's what a sale is, right? And the customer walks into a store, goes to an employee and buying a bunch of products. That's what my sale is. They all need to be together. So let's dive in a relationship where I had the appointment in the hospital with a doctor getting a diagnosis. So in order to have the appointment, what are all the other core business concepts involved? Well, patient, doctor, hospital, diagnosis. So based upon this information, uh, I would end up with, okay, for my event, appointment, there is, I need to have hospital, patient, doctor, and diagnosis all at the same time. They all need to be related. But I'm not done yet, because is this really the best option? Is this a better option than just saying appointment to hospital, appointment to patient, appointment to doctor, appointment to diagnosis? Well, at least this one makes it clear that for every event, I need to have that hospital, patient, doctor diagnosis in place. But let's discuss, let's investigate. If I'm going to investigate my relationship, we have something very cool, one of the other artifacts, and it's called my MBR form, my natural business relationship form. And basically, it's very simple. Give some example records for your relationship. So this is the appointment relationship, where it says, hey, a patient has an appointment with a doctor in hospital, can get a diagnosis. It's not always sure that you have a diagnosis, but you can get one. So, hey, I have an appointment. That's over here. Patient, Dr. Sunil, Erasmus, hospital. I got a groin rupture. Uh, Another appointment. Hey, we have Hans, Doctors Ernie, went to Denver General, but for whatever reason, Dr. Ernie could not give Hans his diagnosis. So I have an optional partner in my relationship. Going back to what we used to do when we did dimensional modeling, we said, yeah, you know what, optional parts. I'm not sure if there should be one, yes or no. It might be, and if it's not there, I'm just using -1, which means it's optional. It's not there. In data vault modeling, we say there is no such thing as optional. A relationship is a full-blown relationship. I always compare it with if I want to do a handshake and I'm reaching out my hand, and since we're online, there's nobody else to shake out my hand as well. We don't have a handshake. There is no handshake. Why not? Because I can reach out, but there's nobody else to reach out their hand as well. So there's no handshake at all. So there's no relationship. So it should not be part of that relationship. So what we do, we're going to resolve because we have sparsity in my relationship. We're going to resolve it by saying, you know what? I have some kind of header relationship. What is always there? Well, apparently, appointment, patient, doctor, hospital is always there. Diagnosis, yes or no. And the appointment can lead to a diagnosis or not. So I have a detail relationship. So I have two different relationships, which results in, hey, this is my event. I see that I have header information, which I always have a hospital, patient, doctor. Sometimes I have a diagnosis. So what I want to tell you is whenever you have an event, whenever you want to see relationships, that event will have another bunch of core business concepts involved. Everything needs to be together. And then you need to do one step further. And then you say, okay, let's look into my model. Let's look into, do I have sparsity and or redundancy? If I have sparsity, meaning I have optional parts, I have two different relationships. If I have redundancy, I would also get into two different relationships. If I'm going back to my simple example over here, if for whatever reason I could have, let's say, another appointment, appointment A. I'm here again, Remco with Sunil, and it's in Erasmus. And I not only got a groin rupture, so this is the same appointment, but he also identified that I'm having a, you know what, let's do it very terrible, I have a stroke, or I have whatever. Then you see, if I'm just disregarding this one, hey, wait a minute. Within the same appointment, can have multiple diagnoses. I can still have the header information, but then I can also say, wait a minute, for that same appointment, there's another diagnosis, stroke. In this case, the end results will be the same. I will have my header information and my detail. So for appointment one, there are two relationships to two different diagnoses. Appointment two, nothing over here. Appointment one has a relationship over here. And appointment two has a relationship over there. So identifying, hey, do we have sparsity? Do we have redundancy? And adjust your model. And yes, it does seem that there's going to be more and more work to be done before you get the right relationship. But this will really, really, really help you in identifying what's done. It will not help you to say, hey, there's an appointment in the hospital, a patient has an appointment, a doctor is having the appointment, and they are diagnosing the appointment. Just having the one-to-one relationship. Because you're missing out what is all being done in order to get the appointment going. It is not optional to have a hospital in appointment or a patient in appointment or a doctor in appointment. They all need to be together. So it is just one relationship. So be very careful. Uh, since I'm good in timing, I guess, what we do and in our road towards data vault modeling, right, into the SL modeling, we are using a very structured guided method to get to the SL modeling. We always say, hey, it's business driven over source driven. We don't care. And if everybody did our training, either the ELM training or the data vault training, we don't provide any source system. And still everybody was able to get perfectly fine data vault models. Why? Because we gave them the business case and we could give them the information about the business. You walk the path together, which I mean that it is not just IT party. It's also not just a business party. You have to party together, and not meaning that you are going to model party, but you have to party together to say, hey, let's have some fun. Let's create a model. Make sure that everything is simple, clear, and understandable, and document well moving forward. Uh, am I still allowed to have some time, Christian?
Yeah, sure. You still have 4 minutes.
Okay, then I'm going to add before I'm going to Q&A a very fun extra part because I was kind of thinking, and it's the add-on on what I was willing to tell you or was planning to tell you before. But remember, before on the discussion on Hans, we also talked about roles and typing, that kind of stuff. And it looks like more flexible, right? It looks like adding a role, a party role or party type or whatever, seems that you're going to be more flexible when abstraction and generalizing. It's the same for relationships. But remember, whenever we are using a role or a type, if you load that information, you need to add the appropriate role or type to store the data. So you need to add more to it. You need to do extra steps to make sure that even though, hey, there's only one relationship with a role and a type to it, but you need to know which role or type it is to be able to store the data correctly. And when you're reading that information, you always need to filter. Hey, I only want to know who is a driver of a certain car. Oh, let's filter on the type driving for the relationship. And it's very hard to understand. Give you an example. Here's a customer and the car, and they have different kind of relationships. You can be the insurer of the car, the driver of the car, or just interested in the car. And there might be more coming in the future. So people say, you know what? Let's do it like this. But again, whenever your marketing system comes in, you need to say, oh, it's of the type interested. Whenever your CRM system comes in, it has to be, oh, I need to add type driver. Reading from it, you have to filter on it. And it doesn't make any sense. And what I'm trying to tell you about relationship, right? On this one, what if I just make them unique and specific to say, hey, I have marketing coming in, everybody's interested in the car, this is the information. And I just load this relationship. I load the drive relationship, I load the insurer relationship. So loading it is easy. I don't need to add a type to it. Reading it is easy. I don't need to filter it. And more important, the model you now see is clear and understandable by the business. What do we know about the relationship between a car and a customer? Well, we know who's the insurer, and we know who's the driver, and we know who's interested in it. What information do you want to have? It's there, we can see it. Well, we want to know who's the driver of the car. I know want to see the person driving it is the same as the person insuring it. Well, it's more comparing of the two relationships. So it makes your life easy and for understanding and also loading it and filtering it.